You're listening to Free Mama Radio, where we believe you can have both a successful business and show up as the mom you want to be. I'm your host, Lauren Golden, a mom who built a full-time income working part-time hours. Now, I help other moms like you learn how to work from home on your own terms, take control of your schedule, and make more money so you can live a totally awesome, guilt-free life. I am on a mission to make sure that no mother has to choose between family and financial stability. So if you've been wondering, can I really have it all? This podcast will give you the answers. Hey guys, I am here with the amazing Monica Froese. I'm going to introduce her in just a second after I kick out all my Zoom stuff that's trying to calibrate now. It's Monday. We're having a case of the Mondays and all the tech trouble. But I'm super excited. We've got a guest today. I don't know about you guys, but our team here at Team Mama, Monica, you can tell us how your team is doing today. We are having a case of the Mondays post holidays. Yeah, we got people like traveling and sick. I'm like, team call canceled. I'm just going to like curl up in cozy clothes and take a little, we're going to ease back into the work day. So we are taking a slow pace. As you guys are jumping on and joining us, let us know if you've got a case of the Mondays as well. But I'm super excited. Monica and I go kind of way back in internet world.
We do.
Yeah. Free mama, really, for me, which is kind of crazy. But if you guys don't know Monica, she is a digital product coach for women business owners and host of the popular podcast Empowered Business. She actually has a fellow free mama who runs her podcast. Shout out to Stephanie. She has an MBA degree in finance and marketing and runs two brands, Redefining Mom, a site for helping women thrive in both motherhood and business, and Empowered Business, where she's committed to empowering 1,000 women to earn $100,000 through digital products. I love that. She spent 11 years working for a Fortune 100 company, running a multi-million-dollar marketing campaign with large brands like Microsoft and HP. I mean, hello, credibility. We know what we're doing, right? Now she provides online marketing education to small businesses that are looking to build a profitable revenue stream through digital products through her online courses and podcast. And what I love about Monica, and welcome, Monica, but what I love so much is that reading your bio is kind of exactly what we're talking about today. We are going to have yes, around reinventing yourself, because how I know you and how some other people in this community might know you is through your Redefining Mom brand, which previously was really known for being in the Pinterest space. I mean, you were the go-to. You've come into the free mama community a long time ago. You taught Pinterest. And so we're going to get to know you a little bit, but I'm really excited to have this conversation around reinventing yourself. And it's not the first time you've done this, because you literally have a brand called Redefining Mom. So I'm so excited to unpack this.
I will say, in hindsight, I picked a really great brand name and trademarked it, because when I started it was just right after having my first daughter, and I started it out of the need for postpartum venting, the lack of maternity leave in the States, all this stuff. And I didn't realize that, in 10 years later, well, 9 years later, whatever, but I would want to reinvent myself again. And maybe even I would say every 5 years, maybe I perhaps reinvent myself. So Redefining Mom ended up being a great brand name for me.
I think that's fantastic and smart on you for getting that trademarked. I had a similar aha moment 4 years ago where I was like, yeah, I should make sure I own this. That seems like a really good idea. That's awesome. Well, let's start from back there. So you had this amazing corporate career. What happened? It's like a 30-minute show, Monica.
Okay, I was loaded question, Lauren. I could say motherhood happened, but that's not totally true. I think I started corporate. I did as a baby at 20, and I did not realize that there were rules and games that were played in corporate. And that was, I was very disheartened by that. And also I'm very much like what you see is what you get. And I really detested having to play games to get ahead, and then watching people get ahead who didn't necessarily earn it, but it was because they were willing to play the game and, kiss up to the right person. And so by the time I had a baby, I had this, and I think a lot of women experience this. I had this intersection of my career taking off. So and in tech that meant travel and stuff. So my career started taking off, and then I had a baby, and I did not understand what that was going to mean. And it was like all these things I felt like I was told about having babies just was not true. Like, uh, I really felt thrown for a loop after she was born. And then I realized that there's just like this gigantic lack of support for working moms out there. And corporate did not help that at all. It's all about, I worked for a Fortune 100 company, bottom line, you're just a number, right? And so like, but I will say that taught me a lot going into my business because I have employees. Um, I could never, I'm so cognizant of not treating them the way that I felt like I was treated. It's just a number in corporate. So I do think that the good news is, well, I didn't have the most wonderful experience in corporate. Um, it taught me a lot, and it taught me what I wanted to see change. And so I had actually done a podcast episode with on someone else's show not too long ago. And she said, has anyone ever asked you if you feel bad for leaving and not effectuating the change that you felt should have happened in
Mm.
corporate? And I said, you know what? I think that that would have been to the detriment of my mental health for sure to do that. But I think I actually make more change in the business than I could. And I really view it as like there are change makers at the macro level out there. Like, you know, a woman who maybe rises the ranks of politics and ends up being very influential. I mean, there are definitely macro influencers out there, but there's a lot to be said about like grassroots micro changes as
Hmm.
well. So I look at it as like I built my own table and
Yeah.
we welcome people in. Like that's a big reason I have the podcast is because uh, lifting other women and their platforms up as well. Which that's like how we met. I didn't even realize I was doing it, but you were one of. I called it the Busy Moms Building Spotlight back in the day,
I remember.
and you were one of them. And it was. I think I always. Maybe I couldn't articulate it yet then, but it was always about giving a voice to other women and like just not just like creating our own rules.
Yeah.
Like I always said in corporate, and at least in my corporate experience, there was always one seat at the table for pretty much anyone that didn't look a certain way. And why am I competing for the one seat at their table? Why don't I just build my own?
Yes.
And that has turned into what I call like a micro economy. And it's how I impact students, my greater community, my employees, um, and also other business owners. And that reflects through like having the podcast and elevating other voices.
That's such a fascinating thing. I think we clearly see very similarly in this. I always talked about like when I was at my 9 to 5 and I wasn't in a big corporate environment, I was at a small business, but I looked one side and it was like the stay-at-home moms and Pinterest and all these things. And it stressed me out because that's not my strength. And that wasn't really what I felt called to necessarily. But on the other side, there was this big lean in movement, right? Like literally that was like happening around the time
Cheryl.
the book
Yep.
came out. Yep. Everything like around this time in my life. And I didn't feel called to lead that crusade either. I'm like you, I always refer to it not as building my own table, but like if I don't like either path, I'm going to get a bulldozer and I'm going to like go create my own. Like that's,
Yes.
I mean, I've always talked about it like that. So I feel like we share that. I think that's really bold of someone to ask you that. I've never been asked that question, but the way that I look at it, I think is similar to you, Monica, where I'm like, we have the ability to create change in our own world that we're creating, like
Yes.
the way we influence our kids, from the way now both of us, right, we have our own employees and we get to choose to do differently and do better. And I
Yep.
think that is still fighting a fight. Like that's still, it's just doing it
Oh
differently.
yeah.
So
Yeah, absolutely.
fascinating.
You need people that make change at that micro level. Like not
Yeah.
everything can be this grand gesture that the whole world finds out about.
Right. That's so fascinating. So you were in corporate, you came to head with motherhood, and that was
I
not
did.
an easy adjustment for you. So what did those years look like? And when did Redefining Mom start?
So it was born in my brain about 7 months postpartum. It came on the internet about 10 months after she was born. And at that time, I actually hadn't even been diagnosed yet with having postpartum PTSD. So I almost died in childbirth, and that was traumatic. And so,
Yes.
like there was just so much that so I have to say, like I did not realize in my early 20s when women were taking maternity leave. I mean, probably like a lot of men see it as well. It was like, wow, that they get 12 weeks off. I'm
That
not
must
gonna
be
lie.
nice.
Yeah, that's kind of how it seemed. And I feel like terrible person that I ever thought that ever crossed my mind. And there was one coworker I actually had went back to and apologized because she used to annoy me being late. And I realized she was under, I had no empathy for her situation. And we had a great conversation because I was like, listen, I was so wrong that I used to be so annoyed with you. And like, I had no empathy for your circumstances or anything like that, because there's just like no room for being human. I found. And then I was coming across all these stats, like 25% of women after giving birth go back to work out of necessity after 2 weeks. And then I found out, because I worked for a Fortune 100 company, that the benefits that I was given was in the top 7% of all working moms. And I'm like, wait a minute here, because I am like drowning. I felt like something was wrong with me, because I'd look around and there would be other women with like 3 kids. And I'd be like, I have 1 and I feel like I can't. I went from being super, super driven and independent to feeling trapped in my life. It was wicked. Well, I had postpartum. I just wasn't diagnosed, you know?
Yeah.
So Redefining Mom was born out of really the maternity leave, me really being upset about the lack of maternity leave, paid maternity leave, and the paid support. Or support in general that working moms were given. And then I was diagnosed with postpartum PTSD. And to this day, I still get found by lots of moms who can find me on Google. I've done podcasts about it. And they're like, thank you for speaking up about this. Because a really enlightening thing that happened to me was I found out, so we call it postpartum PTSD due to birth trauma. I interviewed on a podcast years ago with someone in Mexico. And she said, you know, what the rest of the world calls that? Maternal violence. Because my story is that my birth trauma could have absolutely been a guy delivered me. It was completely avoidable, the trauma that I went through. He had no business practicing, really. And when she told me that, when I realized that the way, even in the States, the way we also have this really high maternal death rate as well, which is like, I don't know about you, but we're definitely told that we're raised in like the greatest country in the world. And I'm like, something is not connecting to me right now about what's going on with motherhood. And then I hit this other point where I felt like, okay, so maybe I was wrong in wanting to be driven and have a career and be a mom. Maybe I have to choose. Like, I got to that point. Maybe I have to choose. And then something snapped about 2 years postpartum. After I got therapy, once I was diagnosed and got therapy, then I realized, wait a minute here. Oh, no, I am a human outside of being a mother. My whole identity is not that I'm a mother. That's part of my identity, but I am a person with interests and goals. And there is literally nothing wrong with me wanting to be a parent and wanting to be ambitious. And by the way, no one's ever asked my husband that question ever. Like, never questioned his want to be ambitious and have a career. And once that flipped, at that same time, the other thing that flipped for me, I actually have a mug that you might be able to see. It says mom guilt crossed off. I had a lot of mom guilt placed on me in the first 2 years about me working, due to like people surrounding me in my life. I reject mom guilt. I think it's a societal construct. I won't do it. I do not have mom guilt. And actually, my 9-year-old is very well aware of this. Like, when she tries to guilt me, especially around work, no, I shut it down. And we have talks about like how she needs to respect herself too, you know, as she's growing up, and when she has interest, she can't let other people come in and tell her that she can't do these things, you know, that she can't, this whole like, we can't have it all thing. I don't even understand that concept. I'm like, I can actually have anything I want. Yeah, that's how I feel about it.
Yeah, no, I don't know if you've ever read my book, but yes, we have very similar voices.
I am not shocked.
So did you start your business before or after you went to therapy? You started blogging.
Before, but I didn't know it was going to be a business. You know, at that point, I like back in the day, do you remember like LiveJournal and I don't know, like microblogging that people used to do about, it was more like Open Diary was one of them. Blogging used to be like, we tell stories about our lives thing. And I think I didn't even though I was in corporate marketing for a long time, I don't think I quite, blog monetization in 2013 was not what it is today. Like, people didn't really talk about monetizing your blog back then.
Unless they were selling you a course on how to monetize your blog to sell a course. And that was the trap that I fell into. So my whole thing, like, you know, I chose the route of like freelancing. And for me, it was like, I wanted to be a blogger, but I didn't know how to be a business owner. And so I like knew all the stats around both network marketing, but also with blogging of like statistically how few people make money. And it's because a blog and a business, you can have both, but a blog is not inherently a business. Like
Correct.
I was just way too green in the internet world to understand how to do that.
And I didn't even realize like so what ended up happening was I got invited to go to the White House unexpectedly.
Oh, well,
You know,
is that all?
well, I put it in spam because I didn't know the White House emailed people. Okay, so especially back.
I need more context around this story, Monica.
So this is like 2015. And it was 2015. It was April 2015. I'm sitting at work, busy work day, and I happen to check my blog email. I mean, I was not making money I only post it when I had time, which was very rare. It was not a business. And so, there was a lot less competition on the internet back then. I mean, Instagram was not what it is now. There was a lot less content competition out there. And so I got an email from the White House. They were hosting this working families event and they wanted me to come. But this was the kicker. This is what made me put it in spam as press. I'm like, press? What are you talking about? I'm like, this has got to be spam. So I put it in spam, happened to go to lunch with a friend and mentioned it, like laughing. And she goes, you might want to make sure that's really spam. And I was like, okay, well, I did. I got to the White House switchboard, eventually got to the person who sent me the email. She's like, no, this is like a legit offer. Well, not only was it that I was coming to this event, they also had me at a 6-person roundtable in the West Wing with President Obama.
What?
Yeah.
That is an amazing story.
Oh, let me tell you, and you don't even know, like, because they don't, like, it's not really publicized, the president's schedule, because it's like, a national security thing. So even when I landed in DC, I didn't know if I was meeting Michelle, if I was meeting Brock. I didn't know. I didn't even know if I was meeting anyone. I just knew I was going to this event in the White House, which was cool enough, And then I got invited at the last minute, like, to the 6-person roundtable. It was actually with his senior advisor, but then he came in. But the thing that changed everything. So I thought, I'm a pretty big Spitfire. So, and, he wanted to know my story, and so I thought I went after everything, to the 6.8% interest on my student loans because I graduated on the wrong year, to, I went after everything about like this, just you name it. And I just went and I gave my piece and he listened. And then at the end, he goes, so what are you going to do about it? And I was like, excuse me, leader of the free world, what are you going to do about it?
Oh my gosh, this is the best story.
I'm like, I thought we were here because we're talking about like bettering the circumstances of working families. And I'm telling you, as someone who is like pretty well off and like, it's not like I had a really good job and stuff. So, and I'm telling you that it's hard. So I can only imagine for the majority of people how hard it really is. And so then he asked me what I was going to do about it. And I was kind of like, what? I'm not going into politics if that's what you're thinking. And then he goes, no, but what are you going to do to create this change? That's right. What am I going to do to create this change? And then that's when I went home and I told my husband it was going to be a business. It was going to be a brand. I trademarked it. And I quit my job 8 months later. And that's the story.
Oh my gosh, that is so cool. I never knew that story. That is amazing. Okay, so we leave corporate. We've got the baby. We're working on healing the trauma. We've decided we're starting a business. Was there kind of a niche before you started getting known for the Pinterest stuff, or is that really what you started revving up for? Okay, let's go.
Yeah. Okay. So, all I knew, I started taking a course about building a blog into a business. And I do think that there is, even then there was still a lot of noise out there. I do think to get started, it is as long as you can resonate with the person who's teaching it and they have credibility. I do like the idea of following a path pretty closely just to get momentum.
Absolutely. Yes.
Because getting momentum in the online space is very hard. So like I had started making some money off of more typical blogging ways, like display ads and sponsorships. Yeah. But I kept feeling like, how am I going to scale this to the level I needed to? And also sponsorships made me feel like I worked for other people. And I'm like, that's not why I want to run my own business. So digital products at the time, like, weren't something people called digital products. Like,
no,
there was no buzz about like creating digital products, even though like courses exist. I was taking a course, but it was like an online course. it wasn't talked about the way it
It's
is
not
now.
mainstream like it. Yeah.
Not at all. So then what ended up happening was I actually accidentally created my first digital product because I quit my job, and then everyone in my community was like, "Wait a minute. The girl who's like all about her right to work and being a working mom just quit her job." And they're kind of like, "Time out. Excuse me, what's going on?" Because I had started
Interesting.
building my email list. I was a very big proponent of building my email list very early on. And so then I was like, "Well, no, no, no. Like I'm still working. Like my daughter at that point was in preschool. Like I worked a solid work week. Like I'm building a business." And then so I had so many corporate moms. They're like, "Wait a minute. I want to quit my job." But here's the thing. I'm like, "Well, I can't really I can't really guide you yet. Like I barely am
I just did. Yeah.
I so I stripped it back. And this is actually how a lot of how I teach digital products now. I stripped it back and I was like, "Okay, well, before you even do that, like you can't just most people can't just up and quit their job. We couldn't. I mean, I contribute to the
Mm.
family bills. It wasn't just I could be like, poof, buy paycheck. So the first thing we had to do was my husband and I built this pretty decent spreadsheet, which now to this day I still sell for $17. It's called the family budget spreadsheet. So what I couldn't articulate at the time was I was solving their number one problem, which was they were going to have to get their finances in order and like be able to project out how they were going to wean themselves off their job. So I launched this spreadsheet. That was my first digital product. It's gone on to make
That's
over
awesome.
300 grand since, and I've done not
Very little, probably. Yeah.
yeah, it like and here's the thing, I am not that person that's like everything is passive. Ugh, I have busted
No.
my butt in this business.
Yeah.
Like there is like this is not but that product just happens to be pretty passive at this
Sure.
point.
Sure.
Um so that was my first digital product, and then from there I ended up writing a book which was about and I just self-published it, and it was about like my journey through corporate. I pulled it down because I would change so much about it now. Just because you evolve as you evolve as a person. But that was like then I turned that into a course. But then what ended up happening was I got a lot of momentum from Pinterest. And because of my corporate background, especially in marketing, and my whole corporate background was ROI, return on investment. Like, how are you going to make a profit? Because I had to go, I took millions of dollars from big brands and then had to show that they were making money off of it. You just don't
Yeah.
take millions of dollars and be like, yes, I spent it all and you got nothing for it. That's not the way it works. So Pinterest was in its heyday at this point. Free traffic galore for bloggers. I mean, you could explode on Pinterest fairly kind of like how people can explode on TikTok today.
Yeah.
That's what we were dealing with in late 2016. But Pinterest at that point had just launched their Promoted Pins platform, their paid advertising platform, which was I would still argue their ads platform has come a long way, but I mean, it was like infancy. It was
Yeah.
like it was pretty
It's a
funny.
little bit of a mess. Or it
And
was.
yeah, oh, it was definitely. And so bloggers would be like, "Wait a minute. I'm
I wanna
getting
do this.
300,000 page views for free. Why would I pay for this?" And they were poo-pooing
Mm.
it. But my corporate background told me, this is going to be really important. And I'm a big proponent on driving targeted traffic, getting the conversion, and moving on with my life. Whereas the blogger model is very
Sure.
much taught, even
Organic.
today to a degree, well, let's get page views. My question was always, but why? Why? So I can send them away to a display ad. Like, click on, I spent all this effort getting you to my site to send you away to someone else's for a few pennies. I never could understand that. I'm like,
Mm.
I need if you're coming to my website, how do I create a relationship from that? Well, the easiest way is to get them on your email list, but more so, I don't want to just pay for people on my email list. So I also want to make money. So then it's, oh, these smaller digital products. So before they went mainstream, I was doing small digital products for years. So I recognized all of this very early on and learned the ads platform. So then I started getting momentum with people asking me about Pinterest. And I guess it's just that I have it's not intentional, but I do have a pretty easy way of explaining things, I feel. And so it was just like blogging friends to start. They were like, how do you do X? And I was repeating myself a lot. And anytime you repeat yourself a lot, it's like, oh, well, now it's like, if I repeat myself a lot, I'm like digital product. Because it's obviously a problem that I'm solving. And that's all a digital product is, by the way, it's a solution to a problem, period. That's all it is. Like a digital product is a solution to someone's problem. So I got pregnant with my second daughter, and a friend of mine said, you have to create a course on Promoted Pins. I'm like, yo, I'm going into hibernation. I am not going to stress myself out like I did my first pregnancy. That was the whole reason I was like, my second daughter would not be here if I had I would not have gone through with having another kid. I just couldn't have. I couldn't have done it in corporate. I feel like it almost broke me. And that's why my kids are 5.5 years apart. So in my third trimester, she said, just do what I would call it a founder's round now. We called it a beta. And
Sure.
to my surprise, I opened like 25 seats and like within minutes, they were all gone. I was like, but I'm
You're
really
onto
having a baby.
something.
I kept saying like, I'm having a baby. So this is going to be quick. Okay. People like, just so you know, like, cause when the baby comes, I'm not talking to any of you. So I did I put the whole thing together in 5 weeks. And then of course my husband encouraged me and he was right. He's like, let's just do like a mini launch. And I didn't really know what that meant at the time. And it ended up being, I did a challenge for the first time, ended up having a decent launch. Now I'm really going into hibernation mode after that's over. That was like really intense. And I closed the cart. I kind of was just like, nope, I'm having this baby. Well, while I'm having the baby, I was getting DMs like crazy to open the doors. And I kept saying, no, 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 no. And my husband was like, Monica, just give them a payment link. What is wrong with you? I'm like, I think I felt that level of, ads can be a complicated topic and supporting people. And I'm like, I don't have the bandwidth to do this. I really want to enjoy my second child. Like I didn't get to enjoy my first. And that's where things got a little complicated because I did open the doors on maternity leave and things really did take off. And then I got invited to Pinterest 11 weeks postpartum. And I ended up traveling a lot in that first year. I actually started flying first class because I was hauling a breast pump everywhere. I learned milk stork. If anyone's having a baby, you can ship milk back home. So I was organized. And when I look back on 2018, I'm like, I don't want to repeat that. That was like,
Too much.
that was, yeah, it was. I mean, and so like, I don't regret it because that's like how the business took off. But like, I was very stressed. It was just a lot for your business to take off while you're having a baby. And I really wanted to keep breastfeeding. And so, like that was, oh my gosh, those trips, the looks I got in first class, rocking my yoga pants with my big pump. And then halfway through the flight, the guys would be side eyeing me when the big apron came out and it'd be, doo, 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 and they'd be like all looking at me like, who's this weirdo in first class? I'm like, moi.
And I just think back to like President Obama saying like, what are you going to do about it? And
I'm
we're
going to
like,
pump in first class and
whatever it takes. That's what I'm gonna do.
And then here comes out the milk and the looks. Cause I would like fly out on a Monday morning with all these guys in suits and I'd just be sitting here,
Well, good for you for doing it and for knowing when to be like, okay, maybe like that was the season and now I'm going to take a season to relax and maybe not push so hard. And
I don't feel like I got there until I recognized the fact I grew the business almost to $500,000 by myself with no help. And that was clear. I mean, I do think I'm a high performer. I do. I think most people who run a business probably are. It was too much. I needed help way before I got help.
Why do you think you waited?
I think I was, well, okay. So, Natalie Gingrich, right?
I do.
Yeah. So Natalie, I've known Natalie for years as well. And she has a director of operations certification program.
Yes.
And I remember I was just at this really bad, like mental burnout, like maybe close to breakdown type thing. My daughter was probably had just turned 1 when it really like hit ahead. And so she said, she connected with me with one of her graduates, and I will never forget this first call. Her name's Teresa. Teresa Trong. It was Teresa Beretta. I don't know. You know Teresa, right?
No, I don't. Does she still work with you?
No, but she helped me. So she's Canadian, so she worked on a contracting basis. But I will never forget our first call. We actually recorded a podcast about this because we get on the phone. It was like April of 2019. We get on the phone and she's ready to, I mean, basically she wants me to sign a contract with her, right? Like, she's like, I'm here to help you. And I was like a deer in headlights. I'm like, I can't even articulate what I need help with. I wouldn't even know where to start. I am so overwhelmed at this point that I don't know. It was kind of like hands in the air. Like I built this big beast of a machine in front of me and I don't know. I kept saying, I don't know. And like, I'm a very articulate person. So this was like, she wasn't expecting that out of me, especially because I'm sure Natalie like had prepped her like for the type of person I am too. And so we joked about this call forever. So after we got past that, I ended up hiring her, and her first thing to do was get me an employee. She's like, you need an employee, like you need. And I guess it was like one of these things where, how do I even download? How do I keep making money and download everything in my brain? It just felt like this really, and I'm a control freak. And I think that's a very common thing too for people who start businesses. You know, delegating doesn't come super naturally to me. It's definitely something I've gotten a lot better at, but I just couldn't even fathom. And then the responsibility of payroll, I just felt like there's just no way. Like I didn't get into this. Like, when did I get employees? Like that just seems so crazy to me. And it happened, and she's still with me, Haley. I hired her in August of 2019. She's my operations manager. Life-changing. Now I actually work 40 hours. Well, I work like 35 hours, and my nanny's here 40, and I take 5 hours a week to like go on my walks and stuff like that.
Your hair done?
Yes, I do get my hair done sometimes. Sometimes I get massages. And I'm not saying I'm not ever stressed out. Like I had a pretty, like coming off the holiday, I was just telling Haley before this call, I was a little deer in headlights this morning, just with everything that has to get done before the end of the year. And we're going on a family vacation right before Christmas. And like my action list is so large. So it's not like I don't get overwhelmed. I mean, and you know, but hiring was like seriously one of the best things I've ever done.
That's awesome.
No regrets.
Let's come back to this topic, because I think wherever people are and they're listening, whether they've started a business or not, this idea of this like personal evolution, reinventing ourselves, redefining mom, trademark, registered trademark, starting over, like all of these different themes. Like I think we can all relate, whether you've done it in business or just relationships or your personal life or whatever it is. When did you make the shift to this iteration you're in now?
Mm-hmm.
And what, if you can even articulate it yet, like, do you kind of see on the horizon? Because before we hit record, we talked about like, we both feel like we're still like we're revolving presently into a like another revolution, like around another trip around whatever it is we go around in personal development. So what was the tipping point where you're like, okay, this Pinterest, this brand, the way that Redefining Mom is currently known is no longer serving me, and I want to do this? And then
well, so Pinterest, essentially, I call it hijacked Redefining Mom. I mean, teaching Pinterest on Redefining Mom was not that's not what Redefining Mom's about. You know, it's about supporting women in their journey, basically supporting other women who want to have both and they don't want to feel guilty about it. And actually, Redefining Mom is going to go through next year a very big evolution, but to get to where, so basically Pinterest, and here's the thing, social media platform, it's not technically, it's a search engine. They kind of want to be a social media platform nowadays. Building a brand off of someone else's platform is very volatile. And anytime they change, then I had to change. And like also the way the online course model was taught did not serve me very well. So what ended up happening was this whole concept of lifetime access, which if you're going to sell an ads course, it has to be updated. Anytime Pinterest changed, I had to update it. But then it came with this Facebook group, and people were, I love them, but they were also kind of needy in there, which is fine because I get that ads is a complicated topic and I am very good at it. And I'm good at synthesizing it. But if someone paid me 4 years ago once, and then they were still getting support. So there was this, now my overhead's getting up to support students who are no longer paying me.
Right. Yeah.
And I have to keep updating, and now I have to keep selling so that I can pay everyone and keep the wheels on the bus. But on top of that, every time Pinterest changed, I had to update it. And it was like a lose-lose situation for running a business. And so there was two things. It was like, this model isn't serving me in the long run. I'm going to be capped because of just pure bandwidth. Also, I felt like the impact I wanted to make was being stifled by just teaching in this container of Pinterest advertising. Like Redefining Mom started because of a bigger reason, like a bigger purpose. I felt like there was something else out there. So my postpartum periods, basically I say are 2.5 years, which is another thing I don't feel like is talked about. This whole like postpartum being done in 12 weeks, like okay, maybe for some women, but I don't think that's the norm. And
No.
so my daughter turned 2.5 last September in the midst of the pandemic. And it was like a veil got lifted off of me. It was
Mm.
this, but which then led to actually 4 months of pretty bad depression. You would think it was liberating, but instead it was almost like a mourning period. I feel like I went through. I had to go through the morning of
Mm.
I was done having kids. I had to go through the morning of like I wasn't happy with my body post having kids. Now we're stuck inside. This pandemic has completely just like I thought I was doing well with it because I actually like being at home and I'm pretty introverted, even though like I'm a social
I did
introvert.
well year one. Year two, not so easy.
Yeah, like by September of last year, it just all came to a head, and I kept circling around. I got to a point where I said, I'm not going to do this anymore. I'm I'm not happy doing this anymore. Like I'm not
Mhm.
happy. I don't want to talk about Pinterest anymore. I'm not fulfilled by this. And I just got to the point where it was okay to say that. And once I came to that conclusion, and this was like a 3 month like mourning period that I had to
Yeah.
go through. I came out the other side and I was like, well, what do I want? I'm like, I want to create change. Like I want to help women make more money. And like, because when we have more money, we have more power, like we make good decisions, we get to do things, we get to support our communities. Like there's just so much. I was very passionate about it. I'm also very passionate about I witnessed some things in my personal life, which I didn't have a term for until recently, which is basically financial abuse. I never
Mm.
really realized that that was a form of abuse, probably because I was very career oriented from very early on and always had my own money. Um, I know a lot of women who get controlled with money, which is like a trigger point for me. Like my husband knows, like don't even like.
Mm.
But I saw a lot of unfortunate things happen that it took me a while to process. Um, and that kind of ties together with how I feel like the impact
Yeah.
when women have more money, we do good things with it. Like that's how I very much feel. And I don't believe like I don't ask permission. I don't like that's just not a thing in my life. If I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it. And my take like with my husband has always been this is what I'm doing. And if you have a very good reason, you can make an argument back to me like why that's a bad idea and we should not do that or you should not do that. I will completely listen to you. I have changed my mind. But like I'm not permission based. Like I'm not going
Mhm.
to ask permission to spend money I make or I'm just not.
Mm.
And I'm pretty big on boundaries and like I said, not having mom guilt and all that stuff. So that's where empowered business, because then I was like, well, what am I good at that I could help women with that could help them make this money? And really, when I look back, it was actually when it all clicked into place. So with the promoted pin stuff, what ended up happening was people were coming into the paid advertising course and they were like, well, I'm just going to run paid ads to get traffic. And now back to like what I had already said, realizing on Redefining Mom, it was like, but why?
Right.
Why? Like you have to have an offer. You have to be offering
It's a
something.
plan. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that funnels get a bad name sometimes, but
Oh, I
really
love
I
funnels.
know, and sometimes they get a bad name though. So people think they're sleazy. I'm like, dude, it's a customer
No.
journey. Like that's all it
Yeah.
is. It's someone's customer journey. And so I actually spent more time in the paid advertising course educating people on having a converting offer,
Mm.
which for me was ended up being just a very easy thing. Like
Fun. Yeah.
yeah, and like I know you're very data rooted and you look at all these different data points. It just like seems very natural to me. So
Mhm.
then Haley and I were like looking back and she's like, do you realize we've launched like 75 digital products over the years? Because
Oh
even
my
when
gosh.
yeah, like everything from planners to, but because even when I was doing the paid advertising things, I still had my Redefining Mom funnels running. And like,
Sure.
so I'm like, oh, I'm kind of good at this. uh,
That's so cool.
and that's where the whole empowered business brand was formed. But now I also feel the next level. And I think this is a learning lesson for me to give myself grace because I'm a perfectionist and I think I have to have everything figured out. I'm sure a lot of women feel like this. They have to have everything figured out. And the reality is,
And they have to get it right the first time, which is
yeah,
why, by the way, we're having this conversation. You have redefined slash reinvented slash evolved multiple times, even just as a business owner, but especially as a woman and mother.
yeah,
Like
oh yeah.
we have to give ourselves permission just to go and know that the evolution is part of the process. It's going to
Yeah.
happen. You're not going to nail it the first time and then be done for forever. How boring would that be, right?
For me, it would be well, and It's funny because when I was growing up, I think I actually used to say that I hate change. I don't like change. I hate change. I was actually very resistant for a lot of my life to change. And now I'm sort of embracing
Crazy.
change.
Yeah.
And, so like this whole year has been about building like the product ascension ladder under empowered business. And I guess it just kind of hit me like a ton of bricks over the last month that there's still something bigger. Like, this is good. I like what I'm doing. We've had success with it. I mean, and my husband always says, like, look at you. You basically blew up your whole brand and you managed to not skip a beat. Like, we didn't take a dip in revenue or anything. Like, what he always reminds me, like, that's pretty impressive. I'm like, okay, but what's next? So we had it's not like there's nothing negative. I don't feel any negative feelings towards the pivot or anything, but I know it's not done. And I'm pretty sure where it's going to manifest itself is reviving Redefining Mom, but not about Pinterest.
Right.
It's going to be about boundaries. And I actually bought a domain a long time ago. I just said this to Haley today. So it's like fresh off the presses. A long time ago, I bought a domain that I couldn't believe was available. And I think it's going to end up being like a subcategory on Redefining Mom. And it's called Raising Her Strong. I have 2 girls and I'm very passionate about a lot of stuff with raising them and, like what I want them, how I want them to see the world. And so I think that we're not done. The evolution is definitely not done. It was a stepping stone.
Well, you're definitely modeling, I think, what you want your girls to embrace. So we've already gone long, but I'd love to give our listeners some crunchy takeaways, if you don't mind.
Sure.
So we know where you've been. We kind of know a little bit about where you're heading, where you want to go, but swimming in the space that you're in now with this idea of digital products, what are 3 kind of starter tips that people can think about if they're like, interest is piqued in this conversation? They're like, I wonder if I could have a digital product. Like, how would I even get started doing something like that? Do you have like 3 takeaways for them?
Yeah, well, like I said this already, but I'm going to repeat it because it's so important. Because the number of people that come to me and say, I don't know anything. Like, what would anyone ever buy from me? And I'm like, no. First of all, a digital product is simply a solution to a problem, period. And women especially underestimate how much we know. Like, things that come so easily to us do not come easily to other people. Like when I was talking about the family budget spreadsheet and I was geeking out over doing cash projections, some of your eyes are probably rolling to the back of your head, but everyone should understand their cash flow in their business and in their family life. But that might not be a strong suit for you. So guess what? People like me who nerd out over spreadsheets create this spreadsheet and you can buy it from us. And to me, it's like second nature, but like I could have easily, and this is the other thing that people tell me all the time. But if I Google it, I can get it for free. So why would anyone pay me? Go Google budget spreadsheet and tell me how many you can get for free. And then tell me why I made 300 grand off of mine. I don't know. I do know why. I know because people actually want to learn from other people with digital products. Like the reason it works is because people are like, oh, I relate to why she created this spreadsheet. That's what I'm trying to do in my life. So yes, like that, you go Google a budget spreadsheet and you're going to get a lot of like,
empty spreadsheets.
Oh yeah, and a lot of like corporate type. It's just not people want, and they don't want you to be 10 steps ahead of them. Like can you imagine if I was like, well, I haven't created a funnel in 10 years, but I'm teaching you how to do it now? Like what?
Right.
That's not
oh gosh, I could have your back here like big time. Because people ask me, they're like, why do you do Free Mama TV and why do you do it? And I'm like, I mean, literally, I could come up with like 10 reasons, but very similar to what you're saying, Monica. Like, I think what they need to hear is even though there's stuff for free, there's the personal element of like, sometimes we get what we need just through the transaction. Sometimes we won't actually show up and do it until we complete the transaction. Like, you need to spend the $17 to sit down and do the budget. Like, it is accessible. So why haven't you done it yet? Because you're not actually invested in the product. Like there's lots of things.
Absolutely. So then the next thing is, once I've convinced you now that you know something, because you do, and just don't question it because you do.
That's awesome.
The big thing here is, and this is the way I teach, very high level, Search engines. Okay. Where do people go when they have a problem? Where do you go when you have a problem? You go and likely pull up Google. If you're my daughter, you're going to talk to Google. If you're a millennial, old millennial like me, you're going to actually type it into Google, which she can't understand, which blows my mind.
That is so funny.
It is scary, actually, because another reason around the internet changing, So having kids is actually very beneficial for an internet marketer, because I'm like, wait a minute,
what's coming? Where are we going?
I feel like I need to know this. Like, I gave her my iPad, and on Chrome there's a microphone. I have never ever used the microphone on Chrome to search, and my iPad has a keyboard, and I'm like,
that's so funny.
Why are you pressing the microphone? And she's like, I'm not typing it. I'm like, why? So it's very fascinating. Anyways, whatever, when you're sitting and you're like, oh, I don't know what would someone ever buy for me? Take just something, anything you do that is like a repeatable process, and start Google that problem. Like, what is the problem that people are having? And go through so I call it reverse engineering. And I take my students through this like whole system of using YouTube, Pinterest, and Google. And it's because Google is text-based, YouTube's video-based, and Pinterest is imagery-based, but they're all search engines. And it's actually so after my students go through reverse engineering, at the end, it's always, no, I have nothing I can create. No one's going to want to buy anything from me. And at the end, they're like, I have 10 product ideas and I want to create them all now. And I'm like, yes, I know. So now
that's awesome.
My next job is to tell you that your first digital product is not going to, what I say, boil the ocean, because when you're trying to get traction, especially on the internet with all the noise, if you put, or as my mom would say, put everything in the kitchen sink in it, it's your first product to get traction needs to be very honed in. And I tell my students, one problem, one solution. You can build the bigger thing later. It's called a product ascension ladder, which is how I teach. But the first thing, especially when you're new online, has to be like an easy yes. Oh my gosh, like my budget spreadsheet. When women are like, how did you quit your job? I pay the mortgage. Like, how did you make this happen? I'm like, it's all about understanding at the end of the day your finances. And here's this $17 budget spreadsheet that I happen to put together that's going to solve that exact problem for you. So you understand exactly where you stand financially. See how I just did that? But when I did it the first time, or the first 75 times, don't think I understood what I was doing, but it just kind of came out over the years as like a framework. And so now that's what I teach.
That's so great. And I know we've got a link, because you've got some cool free stuff around getting started with digital products.
Yeah.
So you guys can go to monicafroese.com/Free Mama Radio. We'll put the link in the show notes. I'll drop it in the chat here later as well. So if you guys are interested in continuing to learn more about this world, I also know you guys is it an event or workshop, something coming up in January?
Oh yeah. Yes. We always do a free, I hate calling it a challenge. I will be honest, because I think challenge makes it sound like it's going to be challenging, but it's really actually fun. So we like to call it an experience. It's like an experience that we run. We're thinking about renaming it. So like last year we called it the Digital Product Dash, but Haley's like, oh, that's kind of boring. So she's actually coming up with new names for it. So TBD, but it will be on that page as soon as we come up with the name in like the next 3 days.
That's awesome. Well, before we wrap up, I've got one last question. Clearly, we are very mission aligned, but in case you need a refresher, the mission of the Free Mama is to make sure that no mother has to choose between family and financial stability. So kind of knowing this conversation around redefining mom, I love that. I can't believe I wrote down reinventing yourself when your trademark was like the name all along, like it's a Monday. So this concept of redefining mom, and kind of all of the women who are listening to us right now, what's one final piece of advice that you would like to give them as they are on their own redefining journey?
Oh my goodness, there's so many things I could say, but maybe if I could boil it down, I'd be like, let's give up mom guilt. No longer. No more mom guilt. Just say no. Or just say no. That's another big one. Actually, I have pens that I just had make. And you're like, one thing, fine. I don't do failure. Like that, maybe in a nutshell, the mom guilt, the boundaries, learning how to say no, it actually all rolls up into, I say I don't do failure. And what that simply means is we all actually, it's like an oxymoron or whatever, because we actually all fail.
Yeah.
The point is that we always pick ourselves back up and we learn from it. So that became my thing. I don't do failure. And that really is equatable to mom guilt and everything else. It's like, I'm not perfect. I am not a perfect mom. I mess up all the time, but I'm not going to beat myself up about it either because I'm doing the best I can.
Yeah. I love that. Monica, thank you so much for such a great conversation. I am still like, you got to sit down, like Obama gave you advice for your business. I'm like, this is amazing. This is the coolest story ever. Anyway, thank you for coming and sharing with all of us. I appreciate it so much.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Awesome. All right, guys, you can check out links to all the things Monica wants to share with you over at freemamaradio.com. We'll get those in the show notes. And I hope you guys have a great rest of your day. We'll see you next time. I hope you enjoyed this episode of Free Mama Radio. Don't forget to check out Free Mama TV right here on YouTube for hundreds of how-to videos and interviews to help you start, grow, and scale a virtual business from home. If you want to join a community of tens of thousands of moms just like you, make sure you join the Free Mama Movement group over on Facebook. And lastly, if you want to learn more about how we can do this together, work to achieve your goals, and make you our next success story, check out my free training at thefreemamamovement.com. I'll see you next time.